Is Marcus and Terry with you on this scary Halloween? I don't know if it's scary or not, but it is Halloween. It might be scary if you're thinking about drinking because that is a scary thing and that could mess up a lot of things that you've done for recovery. Now, what we're going to do today, our topic is about emotional sobriety and being a dry drunk. So, what are those things? What's the idea of emotional sobriety? Like, isn't sobriety just not drinking? Isn't that like the whole idea of sobriety? Well, I think there's a lot more to it, and I think when we get down to it, relapse and non sobriety type stuff happens in the mind first. The reason you are a drunk is because your mind obsessed about alcohol and you had no way to deal with your feelings and your thoughts, and so you turned to alcohol. It's debatable whether you would have drank in that much if you didn't have these mental things going on. We don't know. We're not scientists or doctors or anything. We're just two people who drank a lot and became alcoholics and almost died at the end of our alcohol journey. And now we're 5 years sober, and we're here to tell you what happened with us, what's going on, what helped, what didn't help, and cut past all the junk because I know there's a lot of junk out there about alcoholism, and there's a lot of fancy rehabs telling you need to spend $100,000 to pet a horse and sit in a jacuzzi, which may or may not help. Hey, if that's your bag, you know what? I'm going to buy a horse for $2,000 and you can come pet my horse for $100,000, right? There you go. But the idea here is, what is it that keeps us sober? What is it that stops us from going out and drinking? And what we want to talk about today is the emotional aspect, right? There are people in sobriety, myself, I've been through it, Terry, I'm sure, has been through it, where we have what's known as an emotional relapse. This is where we return to the previous thinking patterns, the previous feelings, and the previous thoughts that we had that kept us drunk. Now, me and Terry have worked very hard on our new thought life, right? We've worked extremely hard to get what we have, and sometimes things crop in. Sometimes things in life, it's like I always say here, there's a set of buttons, and there's a set of buttons for everyone. It might be different for me, it might be different for Terry, it might be different for you tuning in. And that set of buttons will take you instantly into emotional and possibly physical relapse. And we don't know what that set of buttons is. For me, the last couple of weeks had a lot of set of buttons. I mean, those buttons were being pushed. They were being pushed so much to where I was like, I don't usually do meetings all the time, maybe once every year and a half, but I think I'm going to go to two or three just to make sure I'm okay. And what I did is I looked at that emotional relapse and I saw my brain going back to old patterns. I saw myself feeling sorry for myself. I saw myself feeling down and saying, "Oh, woe is me," or thinking that maybe I can't fix a situation. Right? Maybe I feel like I just can't fix a situation and there's no way out and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And I instantly go into emotional relapse and I got to catch that and I got to be like, okay, let's make this work. Let's get back on track. So, welcome and let's dive into the topic. Terry, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, welcome everybody. Welcome, Man from England, RVADR, Andor, Lipcoon. Good to see you all. Uh, Terry, sorry. Oh, I don't know what that means. Okay. Thanks, Andor. I appreciate it. Emotional sobriety. First of all, we need to know what is emotional sobriety. Why do we need it? Um, you know, uh, when you stop drinking, or as far as alcoholism is concerned, I think the first most important thing is that you get physically sober. So the physical sobriety is just basically not drinking and getting through the detox, and that's about it. It's just getting through the chemical addiction of alcoholism. But the
Yeah.
problem with alcoholism is then we have this emotional aspect of it, and that's what drives a lot of people to start drinking again. Um, the, the emotional sobriety would be just like living a grateful, happy life, being able to handle problems when they come up, things like that. One, and then why would that cause us to start drinking if we don't have that emotional sobriety? And that's a big question that we haven't figured out an answer to. But what we do know is that a lot of times those negative feelings and not having emotional sobriety can cause us to relapse, and it can be a dangerous thing. it's hard to get it's hard to stay sober if we don't have that happiness, or not necessarily happy all the time, but just being able to handle our problems. And
Mhm.
that's what we need to figure out how to deal with in our life, is just these negative problems. um, it's complicated. Emotional sobriety is. I mean, we all have things that happen in our lives, and many times it's not our doing. It's not our fault, and
Yeah.
it's a difficult thing to deal with. There's lots of things we can do though, which is good news, to help our emotional sobriety and help us get through these tough situations. So that's kind of it right now. But as far as the emotional sobriety, it's huge. Emotional relapse for me, it's happened. For me, it's happened a few times. I'm a pretty regulated guy as far as my emotions go, but I had to work on it a lot, and especially in early sobriety. In early sobriety, I just, as I've said many times in our webinars, I did everything I could towards sobriety, and a lot of that was working on the emotional happiness and sobriety, and just figuring out how to deal with all these emotions that came up right after I got sober. Because all of a sudden I was sober and I wasn't able to drink my problems away anymore. So I developed a lot of tools, and the most basic one was just being grateful for my sobriety. Just that simple. Being grateful
Right.
for the little things I have in life, a home, people that care about me. Just simple things, but they're huge. And it developed into many other tools that I use, and like and in Alcoholics Anonymous, helping others is a big one, and that kind
Yeah.
of that's what I try to do. And that's what gets me out of myself and gets me out of that those emotional doldrums a lot of times. So yeah, and good to
Totally.
see you, Ty, Shane. Awesome. Thank you.
Totally. And one of the things we got to look at too is oftentimes when you say that, someone goes out and drinks, and sometimes we don't know why. Sometimes you don't see it coming. And I remember in rehab, they always told us, hey, it's the one you don't see coming that's going to get you. And what happens is we're so accustomed to thoughts, especially in early sobriety, that we don't notice them creeping in. Even 5 years sober, I had these thoughts creeping in, and I was like, "What the hell's going on? Why am I thinking these?" And one night I was sitting out on the patio and I was like, holy shit, I just had the thought that I want to drink. And I know I'm probably not going to act on it, but I was like, let's take precautionary measures, because that thought being in there is going to trigger obsession of the mind unless I get it under control, unless I look at it for what it is, unless I look at it and say, hey, these thoughts are things that are programmed in my mind because of old patterns that I've done. Thousands of times I have relieved my stress, and I've had a friend and myself wallowing with alcohol. And so it's natural that when the buttons are pushed, when life gets really hard, when things get really tough, we think about drinking. Or like Ty. Ty says he's 255 days sober and he's going to go to a family wedding and there's going to be alcohol. What do I do? Or maybe some of you guys are going to Halloween parties at work, or, for friends or whatever, and they're going to have all kinds of drinks, and you're not even going to know what the hell they are, what has alcohol, what doesn't, because some of them got little fake eyeballs floating around in them or whatever they have. And we got to look at that and we say, what are we going to do? Because there's a turning point here where we stop living based on reaction, where we're like, I'm going to go to the party and I'm going to see what happens and I hope I don't drink. Right? That's a terrible plan. That is the worst plan ever. What you need to do is you need to say to yourself, what am I going to do instead? What am I going to replace drinking with? What am I going to hold in my hand instead of a beer or a gin and tonic or a whiskey or whatever it is you liked? What am I going to do instead? What am I going to do when I smell it? I was at Video Summit a few years ago, actually, ironic story, and I was talking to a gal who was a manager for a sober site, big sober site. I was excited to talk to her because it brings a lot of opportunities for the work that we're doing here. And she drinks, and she's a normal drinker, and there's nothing wrong with normal drinkers. I just happen to not be one of them. And she hands me her glass of wine so she could write down the information. And, I have no problem holding a glass of wine, but this particular glass smelled really strong. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, maybe this isn't a good idea. So I joked with her, and I'm like, oh yeah, good idea. Hand the booze to the alcoholic, right? And she laughed, and we had a laugh about it. And I was like, it's interesting, but a smell can trigger a chemical response in your body. One smell, one thought, one song on the radio, one little thing can change the course of your thoughts, and you got to be on guard about it, and you got to look at it. And that's what emotional sobriety is about, because if you're living a life like, recently I got into some issues where I wasn't being as honest as I should have. I wasn't being as forthcoming, and I was hiding things, and going back into old patterns, and started feeling sorry for myself and the poor me and the all this stuff. And it was interesting because even being 5 years sober, even with all the stuff that I've learned, even having a talk channel about sobriety, you would think, well, the dude's kind of got it covered. But the fact of the matter is we don't have it covered. We really don't. We don't know what's going to hit us. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
We don't know how we're going to feel in certain circumstances, and we certainly don't know what's going to happen when things push us to drink. That's why it's so important to have tools. What are the tools I'm going to do? For me, when I'm in a jam and I'm like, oh, wow, my thoughts are going crazy, I listen to a talk. I listen to Alan Watts, Ram Dass, Anthony DeMello. I listen to something that will get my mind off it and take me to a place where I don't think about it, because the thoughts are interesting, right? The thoughts will pop up out of seemingly nowhere, and you will find yourself ruminating on them and cycling around them and just obsessing over them. And you don't need to. That's the beauty of it. It's the choice to pick it up and run with it. It's the choice to take it further. It's the choice to take that little fleeting thought that's like, hey, you know what? This sucks, and it's not my fault, and I feel bad.
Yeah.
And then it's your choice to say, yeah, life's kind of like that. And when my boss did that, I should totally get paid more. And my wife should do this. And, I should feel like this. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in a place where you didn't consciously set out to emotionally relapse, but you're there. Or maybe you're the type of person who got sober, but you never got sober emotionally. And so you're sitting there and you're like, well, fuck it, I can't drink because, we know what happens when I drink because I suck at drinking, and I guess I got to do AA because I can't really drink and they took my car keys. But whatever, that's an emotional drunk. That's it. That's a dry drunk. That's someone who hasn't healed the problem, because drinking oftentimes is a symptom of something else. Now, it is in and of itself its own problem. Like if you take a normally healthy, fine, upstanding, normal person and give them as much booze as Terry and I drank, they're going to be an alcoholic. But there's certain things that lead to that, right? Like, obviously a normal person wouldn't just wake up one day and be like, I feel like having a couple of fifths and 40 beers. They don't do that. But people who are ill usually do, and we got to kind of look at that. So,
Right.
a lot of comments here. THC Gamer says, I needed a topic like this. There was a song on the radio. Yeah, and that could do it. Movie Top Gun with Tom Cruise triggered me. It can. Megan says, hey guys, happy Halloween. Happy Halloween to you, Megan. Hope you're staying sober, which I think you are, so that's awesome.
Yep.
Leslie says music is a big trigger for her, and it can change mindset. Absolutely, it totally can. If you don't think music can change your mindset, have teenage daughters. Because, like, they go in the room and they listen to a song 47 times and they come out and they're like, I don't like life. And I'm like, yeah, of course, you listen to that song. I don't like life because I heard it coming through your room and now I'm depressed. So that can affect you, and you have to be on guard with what can and will affect you. And we are susceptible. We're vulnerable, right? I like to think that I'm this big, emotionally muscly guy, but really I'm more like SpongeBob when he has the inflated muscles and he just pretends he's muscly, right? Really, we are vulnerable. And we got to look at that and come to grips with it and say, hey, that's not so bad. We just learned to deal with it.
Right. Hey, Mike, you said you answer questions, and yeah, we do. Usually we talk a little bit, and we might make some comments on something that sticks out right now, but ask a question. We'll get to it.
Absolutely.
So, one thing the Ty was mentioning, and you already talked about a little bit, attending the cousin's wedding, will be served, and can I have some advice? And I know this isn't quite on our topic, but that's an important one because we got Christmas parties coming up, we got Thanksgiving coming up. I'm sure most of us are going to something where there's going to be alcohol being served and all that. And
Yep.
it's important to, for me, especially in early sobriety, it was important for me to have a game plan as far as when I was going. And there's a couple tools that I use, and you need to figure out what's going to work for you. But one of the main ones is I had my own transportation, so if I felt squirrely at all, I could leave, and that was an important one. But something like a wedding, it's not polite to leave until after the cake is cut and the first dance and all that stuff. It's you kind of have to be there. So that maybe another thing is to figure out something non-alcoholic that you like to drink,
Yep.
not the near beer, because it's too easy to just say, okay, I'm just gonna have a beer, but something else, soda water with a splash of grapefruit, something like that.
Mhm.
And and then on top of that, maybe bringing something with you, leave it in the ice chest in the car, just in case they don't have something that you like to choose from at the bar or whatever is being served. And so that can be another tool. Um, Having somebody there or somebody you can call that knows that you're trying to stay sober, that's a really good tool as well. For me, I go to events with my wife. If she knows I don't drink, she'll have a half a glass of wine. That's fine for me, whatever. But she knows I don't drink, so there's some accountability there, and just little tools like that. We have some videos on what to do as far as that goes. You can look through our YouTube channel and just some tools to stay sober in situations like that.
Yep. Absolutely. And it's an interesting question because Humble Life brought up the second part of it, and he's like, I've been drinking for 20 years. How do I go out and have a good time when everyone around me is drinking and I feel left out? Well, what I like to do is I like to ask myself what I'm left out of, right? What am I left out of? Some people can drink and have a good time, and that's all fine and good, but is it really that good of a time? Is it really that different when you're not drinking? I could tell you after 5 years, I've gone to places where people drink, and I've gone to places where people don't drink. And I've stayed sober, and I've had more fun sober than I've ever had drinking. And you actually learn more. Like if I'm at business meetings and I go to the bar, I go with a notepad, and everyone's getting hosed and telling me everything they do. And I'm like, hey, this is pretty cool. I get to learn everything everyone's doing. Um, Whereas when I was drunk, I would just have a conversation and I wouldn't be paying attention. And I'd end up, wondering how the hell I got to my hotel room. And so we got to look at that and say, what are we left out of? And every time you say, I feel left out, I want you to plant a memory in your brain of the worst times you ever had hungover or drinking. I want you to think about the wallowing, the waking up the next day not knowing what you did, and the obsessive compulsive mindset. I want you to think about the sickness in your stomach and the way your mind felt and the way you started to go insane from alcohol. And I want you to say, that's what I'm left out of, and I'm glad I'm left out of it because that's what happens when I drink, and I don't need that anymore. And I think what you'll find is that there's plenty of things to do sober. I know Terry rides bikes, and he rides bikes sober, which is a good thing because you shouldn't ride bikes drunk.
I used to.
Used to, yeah. And that's the thing is we got to look at that and say, what is it that I want my life to be like now? Because here's the deal. You don't feel left out. Society's preconditioned ideas and programming made you feel left out. Just like when you were a kid and you're sitting there at Thanksgiving and you're 18 years old and you're like, why can't I drink? I'm an adult. Damn it, I can go in the military, but I can't drink. And it's the same kind of thing. It's a societal left out. It's not a real thing. It's not real. Nobody cares that you're not drinking. Sure, the drunk guy might be like, hey, brother, you got to have one with me. And you'll be like, you know what, I'll have a Coke with you. And he'll forget all about it or whatnot. But the fact of the matter is you were conditioned to feel that way. Those thoughts and those feelings are not your thoughts. They're not your feelings. It's some executive in a building that's making billions of dollars for the alcohol industry that made you feel that way. That's what it is. So let's call a spade a spade. Or maybe you feel like you're anxious and you can't get rid of anxiety if you're at this party or this situation unless you drink. Well, I found being sober, like when I used to go to a party, I'd rush for the first alcohol. And I'd notice that after 15 minutes my anxiety went away and I was like, "Yay, this alcohol shit works pretty good." Then I noticed as I was sober, I'd go in and I didn't rush for the alcohol, and after 15 minutes my anxiety went away. And I think we need to really look at how much credit we give alcohol. Like, you're giving alcohol credit for all the shit that is you. Oh, alcohol makes me funny. No, it doesn't. You're funny. I know plenty of people who drink alcohol, and they are not funny. They are not even close to being funny. So it's not the alcohol, it's you. Oh, when I drink alcohol, my anxiety goes away, and I think I'm better than I am. No, that's you. Right? There's some people who drink alcohol like me, and I felt like shit worse than who I was. So we got to look at it and we got to say all those feelings are mustered in and of myself. And I never will forget the memory I had when I got out of rehab and my family wanted food from a place where you'd go and sit at the bar to order takeout food. And it was the first time I had ever, or actually this was before sobriety. So I'll tell you the other one after too. But before sobriety, I hadn't had anything to drink, and I go to get food at the restaurant. And I remember being shaky and nervous and jittery because I hadn't had my drink. And the lady comes around with my drink on the little waitress thingy. And all of a sudden, I see that drink and I start feeling better. And I was like, wait a minute. I started feeling better and I hadn't even drank the drink. So that's me making those feelings. And I'll bet if I asked Terry too, in sobriety, are those feelings that you had the good stuff, like the feeling good about yourself, the dealing with anxiety, the confidence, the being funny, or whatever it is? Are those things missing from your life without drinking?
Absolutely not. I'm much better at all those feelings. Or the feelings are much stronger. I'm wittier. I think I'm funnier. You'd have to ask other people if I'm actually funnier, but I think it's all better. Everything's better.
Absolutely. And it's funny because we attributed all that stuff to alcohol, and it was us all along. And it's funny because in life, you're searching and you're searching and you're searching for something to fill the void, to make you feel better, to make you feel like you've arrived. And a lot like the lie alcohol tells us, it's you. It was you all along. And I remember talking to someone in sobriety, and this person was like, I'm just sad because I want to see God every day. And I'm like, do you not have a mirror? Because every time you look in the mirror, you're seeing the face of God in you. We are made in his image, if you want to go biblical, but God's in all of us. And what you're seeking, what you're searching for in alcohol, in friendships, in money, in finances, it was in you all along. And once we realize that, we're free to be like, hey, I don't need anything. I don't lack anything. And I hope that makes sense. And I hope that helps someone out there. Let's see here. Leslie, glad you like that. Jennifer, good to have you here. Happy Halloween, she says. Andor says the brain gives dopamine before the first drink. Absolutely. It's a planned response.
Yep.
So, yeah. Humble Life says, thank you so much, guys, for talking to you guys. Makes a lot of sense of what I'm going through. And I think that's one of the things that we try to strive for is to say, you know what? We were where you were. We understand this stuff. And we're not looking at it like, oh, you know what? We've arrived and we figured it out. I haven't figured nothing out. I'm 40 years old. In 2 weeks, I'll be 40 years old. And I'm sure when I'm 60, I'll be like, yeah, I didn't really have it figured out. I'll watch these videos and I'll be like, man, there was a lot of shit I needed to learn. And that's really what we got to look at. And I love the name, by the way, Humble Life, because that is the key to sobriety, humility and gratefulness.
Yep.
Because they say grateful never relapses. If I'm grateful, I'm not going to relapse, because relapses happen emotionally because you feel like you should have more. You feel like you should be more. You feel like you're getting the short end of the stick. And really, you're not. Like, tell that to a guy who's begging for change so he can get booze. Well, at least you're sober and at least you have change and you choose not to use it on booze, right? Things could be a lot worse. Sure, they could be a lot better, but they could be a lot worse too. And I'm grateful every day I wake up and I look outside and I hear the birds chirping and I see my dog being totally stupid and I'm like, this is good. This is life. This is where I'm at. And it might not be perfect. It might not be the dream I thought when I was a kid where, I'd be absurdly rich and people would be like bowing down at my wisdom, or whatever it was we dreamed of. I had weird dreams when I was a kid. But it's what it is, and I enjoy it, and I'm grateful every minute. And I'm grateful that I get to come on here every Thursday and talk to you guys. I'm grateful for, people like Terry who just are good people who want to talk about sobriety and are honest about things. And when we look at that and we count the things we're grateful for, life changes. You can't go get drunk and be grateful at the same time. It's very difficult to do. So we got to look at that.
Yeah. And hey, Veronica, good to see you, and appreciate your posts. I read them every day. Sorry, I don't put a like on them all the time, but I'm a busy guy, I guess. I don't know. I need to do better. Jennifer, good to see you. Yvonne and Melissa, great. Leslie, I don't know if I missed anybody, but awesome to see you all here, and I'm grateful that you guys are all here. And gratitude and humility, they're huge. I talk to a lot of guys that have like 40 plus years of sobriety, and it's funny because when I first was introduced to some of these guys, I'd be like, you must know everything, and they are the first to admit that the longer they're sober, the less they know. It's pretty funny, and and that's just living in humility. I ask them how they're doing, and they're like, I'm doing great. Life is good. I'm happy I'm here. I'm glad I'm sober today. That's how they deal with it. It's just humility, gratitude. That's it. And that's what when I first got sober, this time, this time that stuck, at least until now, is I decided that when I was going to do what these guys with sobriety or extended sobriety did. I just saw what they did, copied them,
Yeah.
didn't, and that was what I did. And that's how they live. Gratitude, humility, willing to try new things that are versus those old bad habits that I used to do. And that's what's really helped my emotional sobriety is doing what they do, concentrating on
Absolutely.
sobriety. Lip Kun Huang says, "What do you do for fun to replace alcohol?" When I first got sober, I thought about what did I do before alcohol became a problem for me, and and as Marcus mentioned, I bicycled, so that's what I started to do. I love to hike. I did that. So neither one of those you could really have alcohol with, right?
Mhm.
Um, walk my dog, things like that. As far as those evening activities, when there's parties or friends are going out to the bar or something, I personally stayed away from those situations for the first few months. And then I slowly started back into those things where people are going out and stuff, but I started it very slowly. And as I said before, uh, today is I would bring my own transportation. I wouldn't get a ride from somebody, especially that's drinking or whatever, but bring my own transportation to the event. And I plan on being that first guy that leaves. And that's what I did, especially early. Be the first guy to leave, and then I start to learn when it's time to leave. When you're sober and all the other people are drinking, you start to learn when they're all starting to get too drunk or whatever, and it's time to go. I used to be one of those guys that was like, the last one at the party. Have to say goodbye to every single person. Now I say goodbye to the host and maybe a few key friends. And I better keep talking because Marcus,
Yeah.
you all right there?
Yeah, I'm okay. It's a
Okay.
nagging asthma cough. Sometimes when the air's on, it gets me, but I'll
Yeah.
mute myself while you keep going.
Yeah, and or you're saying hobbies indeed they come back, and that's a huge thing, like painting or something like that. I know some people that have gone back to their artwork, and some people develop a new hobby. There's a friend of mine. He was 450 plus pounds when he was drinking and using, and he got into powerlifting. He's down to like 240. He's just a rock solid muscle, is what he is, and he's all into working out. And some people could look at it and say, "Oh, you just picked up a different addiction," but hey, whatever. It's what's keeping him sober, and he's helping other people, and he's having a happy life. So it's seems to work for him. Another person,
Absolutely.
they took up running. So a lot of people try different things. On the contrary, another person that I know he's started drinking again last week, and he didn't do anything different. He just sat at home, sat in his thoughts, let the thoughts spin around in his head, and he doesn't know why he started drinking. Just does. I mean, I see that he may or may not have emotional sobriety. Well, he doesn't now that he's drinking, but it didn't seem to me like he had emotional sobriety. I mean, I'm not him, so I don't know for sure, but he definitely had some frustrations in his life, and that were seemed like they were a bit higher of a priority than staying sober. Now, now he can't deal with those problems that came up because he's drunk, and he can't even function in society. And I don't know what to do. Don't know how to help him other than be there for him when he's ready.
Yeah. It is tough. And, I think a lot of times when I go to meetings, if I haven't been in a long time, like I did recently, we're reminded of what it was like. We're reminded of, hey, I was like that.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop drinking. And we have friends that go out, and sometimes it reminds us, wow, I don't want that. I would never want that back. And we got to look at that and we got to focus and be like, hey, you know what? I don't want that. I'm okay. Life is going to be okay. And when we remember that, it's another thing to be grateful for. Like Yvonne says, it's so good to wake up without a hangover and all the emotions that go along with it. Have a cup of coffee, and think about good stuff. Absolutely. And our VA says I'm starting to love the no hangover mornings, and that's one of my favorite things. Is I don't wake up with OCD and hangovers anymore. I wake up actually feeling pretty good. I've dropped a few pounds since the drinking days. And you feel better. Your mind's in a right place, and it doesn't cycle over things that get you hung up. And a lot of people, they talk about hang-ups, and hang-ups are going to get you hangovers, because if you got a hang-up and you're not dealing with it, something in your life that's blocking, it's so much better to just deal with it. It's so much easier to deal with it, because what we're doing is we're prolonging it, and we're sitting there and we're like, I can't talk to that guy. I mean, talking to that guy is going to be the end. Well, maybe you don't need to talk to that guy, or maybe you do, or maybe you just need to figure out a way to deal with it without drinking, and really, really focus on it, right? Which is pretty important. All right, Deb says, yes, I find out when I start thinking about it, still in the early days, my cellular memory gets triggered. My head starts to feel numb in anticipation of it. And I think it's good to remember that that's pretty normal. Like, that's going to happen. Like, if I stub my toe, it's going to hurt. If it doesn't hurt, I'm going to be like, what the hell's the matter with me? I mean, I better go to the doctor and figure out what's going on. And so the same thing, if you're not triggered, if you don't have, an occasional thought to either relapse into drinking or relapse into old thought patterns, you might want to look at that and be like, okay, maybe I'm on a pink cloud, or maybe something's going on, or maybe there's something I need to address, or something I'm ignoring, because it's entirely normal. Like, you're going to have those feelings because you put them in your mind so many times. Matt Clark says, Canadian Prison and Sobriety Channel here to support you. What's with the echo? Sometimes we have an echo. I try to deal with it, but until someone brings it up, I really don't know. But thanks for bringing it up. I will try to get it. Let me know if it does get better. And good to have you here. I know you reached out about being a guest, so we can check that out definitely. Andor, yoga and those meditative dance events Only tea and water. Yeah, yoga's a great thing to do. Brandon says 6 months sober. It's Halloween, and I'll admit I bought 18 Heineken Zero non-alcohols. I 100% won't drink alcohol again, so I won't be drunk. I broke my sobriety. It's really up to you.
Yeah.
I do know that Heineken Zero is 0% alcohol. That was the whole idea behind it. So, that's for each person to decide. There's plenty of people in sobriety that enjoy non alcoholic beer. There's some people who can't. I didn't start looking at, tasting things or trying things until 5 years sober. I could tell you right here and now, if I had near beer within my first 6 months of sobriety, it would have caused a lot of trouble. Why? Well, one, it has the same smell, which would have been easy to hide things from my wife. I would have been like, hey, you know what? That's just near beer. I know how my mind works. I'm not going to mess around with it. Also, it's going to trigger the memories, so maybe be very careful with it. I wouldn't look at it as breaking your sobriety unless you think you have. If you can do the near beer thing, more power to you. Some people can't, so my caution would be very careful. Terry, what are your thoughts on that?
It's just not worth it to me. There's plenty of other things that taste better than beer to me. And don't get me wrong, I love beer. And but yeah, exactly what you said. One of the most important things that you just said was it smells the same, so you could easily drink that, and then you could drink another beer. So the back of your mind, that alcoholic part of your mind, can just say, oh, well, now I can have a beer. My wife smells this on me. So there's that would be one bit of accountability that's just out the window, that you could, I can get away with it this way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the way that I thought when I was drinking, is how can I get away with this? And people think that I'm not drinking. And that's a dangerous thing. I try not to take any chances, no matter how little they are. And that's helped me so far.
Yeah.
And sometimes I end up getting in those situations. You can't hear Terry. Can you hear me?
You guys hear Terry? Type Terry if you guys hear Terry.
Huh. I moved my microphone. I hope I didn't unplug it.
I turned you down a little bit when Matt Clark said there was an echo, so hopefully it is working now.
Okay. Terry Auto is bad.
Okay, is it better now?
Hello. Anyways.
All right.
Guess I'm back. Your humble life says there's always a devil or a demon on the bottle of beer or hard liquor. That should tell us something. Huh. Oh, Terry has an echo. Oh, okay.
All right. I think what I'm going to do is invest in a earpiece, because I'm listening to you on my speakers, which I think is why we get the echo.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I guess I have to do the same thing.
I don't know if the echo comes out on your end. It might. Is anyone getting an echo on me? I don't think so. Okay.
So, yeah, I'm not a doctor. I'm just telling you all the sobriety things from experience, and also I'm not a technical professional as well, so that's why there's echo.
Yeah,
So,
and if you guys saw all the stuff that goes into making this show work, a lot of people think we just flip on a webcam and that's about it, but I mean, I got a lot of crap around here that's, making it work. So there's a lot of stuff, which, by the way, if you do want to support the channel and help us reach other alcoholics and get PDFs and MP3s from our videos, go to talksober.com, click on support the channel, sign up. It's less than the cost of a cheap beer a day. And you can help support what we're doing, and you probably feel good about yourself being part of it. We're also going to be starting weekly private calls with our members. So, like, if you have something that you want to talk about but you don't want it out in YouTube land, we're going to have that available. They will be in a private setting. You can talk about issues, you can talk about things, and you can get the help you need. which I think will be good. Again, we're not doctors or trained professionals. We're just telling you what worked for us. If you do want to be part of those, go over to talksober.com, click on the support the channel, or I forget which button it is. Let me see which button it is. Talksober.com. Where'd it go? Okay, well, there it is. Okay, so talksober.com, just click on support the Talk Sober show here. It'll take you to the page. Now, I haven't made a sales video, but we have some little quotes and stuff. And you can just fill this out, and you'll be supporting the channel. If you ever want to cancel, just write us and say, cancel or whatnot. But for less than the cost of a cheap-ass beer a day, you can be helping out what we're doing, and you can get all kinds of things. Now, we are working on a lot of other stuff that you guys will be help supporting as well. One of which is I'm going to make kind of like meditative videos and audios for you that you could listen to when you're having a trigger or when you're thinking about a relapse or when you're getting bent out of shape. That way you guys can rely on some of the things that have really helped me. And since you guys do like listening to Terry and myself, I think it'll be a helpful thing to hear from alcoholics, because for me, I mean, the AA talks were okay, but I found more peace of mind in other talks, and I had to adapt them to sobriety. So that's what I'm working on, is adapting those to sobriety for you. Okay, Melissa says, I freaking love both of you together. Great team, never stop. Thanks for that, Melissa. It's great to have you here. We love having you guys here. So yeah, awesome stuff.
Betsy says, do you give advice to people that live with an alcoholic on this chat? Well, Betsy, what we do is we talk about alcoholism from our own experience. Both Marcus and I are alcoholics, and we do not live with alcoholics. But we can tell you that from our perspective, I'm happy to try to answer any questions you might have. But there's also many resources you can go to. One of the main ones that I know alcoholics' spouses or significant others use, or family members use, is Al-Anon. That's a great way to find out more information. But go ahead, shoot. Let's hear what you got to say.
Absolutely. And we'll take any question, and we'll be honest with you if you don't think we can answer it or if we don't know. But, I think what you'll learn from us, Betsy, is what's happening on the other side. Like, we can give you the perspective of what your husband or whoever you're living with is going through, and we can show you, like, hey, this is what's going on in his mind, because oftentimes the person who's living with the alcoholic resorts to anger and ultimatums and trying to, beat the demons out of you kind of thing. And oftentimes that doesn't work because it doesn't get to the understanding of what alcohol is. And when you understand that an alcoholic feels like they cannot live without alcohol, like when you look at it, and if you were to say, Marcus, you can have food or alcohol, I would have freaking chose alcohol. I would have, okay, if that's my choice, I would have chose alcohol. I'm the kind of person who's a germaphobe and was going through trash bins to see what was left in bottles I had thrown out. And so when you look at that and you come at an alcoholic with anger and guilt trips and all this stuff, I think it's not understanding. Now, that's not to say coddle them and let them do whatever the hell they're doing, but that's to say approach it from a different angle and try to understand, oh, wow, they're not just trying to be a dick. They literally think they can't live without it. And that's why you have drug addicts who do crazy things. Like they go and steal. Like a normal upstanding business person or housewife or whatever is now a thief. They would have never been a thief. Alcohol turned them into a thief because they feel like they need alcohol to survive. People turn homeless because they feel like they need alcohol to survive and no one's supporting them. And hey, if I panhandle, I could at least get enough to get my drink. And that's what they're looking forward to every day. And they feel like their life is going to end. And unfortunately with detox, when someone is detoxing from heavy amounts of alcohol, their life very well could end. It could be a real threat. And the best thing to do is get someone in the doctor, get someone to the hospital and say, hey, you know what? This guy's been drinking or I've been drinking. What should I do? And that's a very, very important, very valid thing to do. for an alcoholic, because it's like, hey, you don't know what havoc is wreaked on their body and their mind. And, alcohol makes you crazy. It makes you batshit freaking off the rocker crazy. And so you're not dealing with a rational person. And if you try to rationalize with a rational person, you're going to feel like you're insane. And the key is to say, hey, look, I'm going to come at this from understanding. But, Terry, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I was reading grateful music. Sorry about that. I was focusing on what the great music had to say.
No problem. But yeah, dealing with that, I hope that helps. I hope that makes sense. And what I would do if I were you is read as much as I can, try
Yeah.
to understand it. Also, there's videos a while back. If you watch the videos like a year and a half ago, I actually dealt with taking my brother to rehab, and there was some advice and some tips on that one too.
Yeah, I've dealt with a lot of people that I've tried to help get sober and that have gotten a little bit of sobriety under their belt, and then they've gone back out. It's hard. It's really hard, and it's really hard for me not to blame myself because I'm working with them, trying to help them stay sober. Um, I've had to let go. I have to understand that for me, nobody else was going to get me sober. No situation I was in was going to get me sober. It had to be me and my decision. And that was the most difficult thing. So a lot of these people that I know that end up going out and start drinking, I have to let go and wait until they've decided. Wait until they don't have those excuses anymore. Great music. This ties in a little bit because you made two comments here, and you said I've been trying to stop for a few years now. Nightlife, social situations, stress, small wins, and more have me on the liquor roller coaster. I can do a week or so without drinking, and then you say the gas station beers have been getting me down from Hennessy and rum, but appreciate these discussions that highlight many of the negative thoughts and behaviors. And now, for me, when I first got sober, there was a lot of things that I kind of self-imposed that I had to not do. And that's because I didn't know what was going to trigger me. But at the same time, I had to work on what I was going to do for sobriety. These little daily things that I was going to change my mindset, get my mindset into a sober mindset. Now I have things that I kind of steer away from, but I can walk down the liquor aisle at the supermarket now, and I can go to those bars. I don't hang out at them because that's just that. Why would I? I don't want to hang out with liquor anymore.
Yeah.
But it's what I had to do is just start to change my mindset, and that's what this person that I know that started drinking again. The person still has the, but if I do this, and if I do this, and if I do this, and if I do this, they keep saying, but if I do this, and it'll get better, and I won't have to drink. That's not it.
Yeah.
It's you have to get sober first and develop a new life. It's not if I move, if I get more money. No, all that's just going to keep going away as you continue to drink. You're not going to get the money first. You're not going to moving isn't going to help you. Um, even the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous talks about you can move to Greenland, and then maybe an Eskimo is going to walk up to you with a bottle of vodka. You can move anywhere, and it's going to be there. You're going to find it if you want it. And that was definitely the case for me. Absolutely. All the stores would be closed. I'd find it. No problem.
Yeah. For sure. So yeah, I mean, we got to look at it. We got to take it slowly, and we got to learn to live again, and that's really the key. And once we learn to live again, it's like now I don't need alcohol, and we need to make a life that we don't need to run from, or we don't need to hide from, or we don't need to drink about, and that really is the key. So, hopefully, that helps. Are there any other major questions, or anyone got anything on their chest they need to talk about? Let us know, and we'll take it from there. Anyone struggling on Halloween? The good thing about Halloween is there's lots of sugar, and us alcoholics do crave sugar. So there you go, right?
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I live near San Francisco, and we would go into San Francisco here and there on, every once in a while on Halloween, and boy, that place is crazy. And talk about alcohol and drugs all over the place, definitely.
Yeah.
Huge party atmosphere. So what do? Now I stay home. I take it easy. Um, I went to a sober Halloween party 2 years ago, and you know what? It was fun. They had a DJ. It was all good. Food, lots of good food, lots of candy. It was great. And I'm sure there's many of those types of gatherings around. But it's all part of the emotional sobriety and being, just not letting those emotions drive you into relapse.
Yep. Ty says, just off the wall question, what should someone do with communion that uses real wine? Well, you could choose not to take it. Like, one of the things in life is you're going to learn that people are looking at symbols rather than the real thing, right? Like, you could commune with whatever you think God is, or whatever the God of your understanding, or whatever they call it, without wine and without crackers and without a church. Doesn't even matter, right? And it's kind of like the old Zen thing where they say, um, spirituality is like a finger pointing at the moon, right? And or a guru is like a finger pointing at the moon or something like that. And what happens is all the people start looking at the finger and examining the finger, and they're like, "Wow, this is it. Look at this. We worship the finger." And it's like the finger's sitting there saying, "Hey, dumbass, the moon's right there," right? And the same thing happens in life where we worship these things. We put more homage on communion than actually talking to God, you know? And we got to kind of look at that. And, I'm going to leave that to you. I mean, do I think that the amount of communion wine is going to make someone drink or trigger a relapse? I don't know. Early on in my sobriety, yes, it probably would have. And I think God would rather have you sober than have you do communion and get drunk. Like, I mean, let's just call it like it is. And we have to look at that.
Yep.
So, yeah. All right, Melissa says, Terry, your sober Halloween story just made my heart smile.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. I thought it was a terrible story. Thank you.
She says it's amazing the memories we can make. We can remember what we said and did the night before. Shit,
Yes.
even crazy things. I'll go with that, right? We'll just say crazy things. But yeah, we don't really want that anymore. And I like coming home from a business meeting knowing, hey, I didn't get in any mischief. I didn't get in any trouble. I didn't fall on my head and have to be carried to my room. True story. And, we look at that and it's like, hey, I'm good. I don't have to worry about that anymore. And that's a gift. That is a gift that sobriety will give you if you let it. There are lots of gifts sobriety will give you, but you have to let it. And you have to really live a life where you stop thinking about you all the time.
Right.
So, yeah. Any last minute thoughts there, Terry?
Well, let's see. For emotional sobriety, um, it's important. Like I said in the beginning, getting the act of getting sober and not drinking, that's the most important thing. Is don't take that first drink. That's your physical sobriety. But most people that have lasting sobriety realize that emotional sobriety is just as important as a physical sobriety as far as a continuing sobriety, and that's being able to deal with your thoughts and things in a positive way. Being aware of your emotions. It's okay to have the emotions, positive or negative, but having those emotions, being able to recognize them, learning how to deal with those emotions, it's an important thing. Like, let's say you're going into a situation that is a lot of anxiety, like maybe a job interview, and you're scared of what might happen. Maybe you could focus on what's going to happen if I get that job. Focus on the positive, and just not just and try not to dwell on these negative thoughts that happen. Just understand that they happen. It's okay. They're going to pass. Um, being involved with other people, trying to help other people, or just having a group you hang out with that aren't your old drinking friends. People, or maybe they are your old drinking friends, but you're doing other stuff, like you're going on a hike with them instead, going to the beach or something like that, and just doing positive things. And of course, as we said earlier, the being grateful, trying to be humble, realizing we don't have all the answers, and that we're willing to learn and try to grow. And that's a lot of the things that I use to try to stay emotionally sober, and it seems to help so far.
Hmm.
And that's what I'm going to continue to try to do.
Absolutely. All right, so I think that's about it for today. Definitely go support the channel. Check out our Facebook group. The link is in the live chat. I'll put it again. If you want to support the channel, go to talksober.com, click on support the channel, support us, and we'll get you the details about the private calls that we will be having. And have a sober Halloween, and we'll see you guys next week.
Right on. Thank you, everybody. Happy Halloween.
Thanks, guys.